So let's look at the introduction to McCloskey's 1983 The Rhetoric of Economics article. It's in the introduction that McCloskey is going to orientate the reader, do a bit of foreshadowing of what's to come, and is also really it's the nature of the introduction in a way, that it doesn't really make arguments, it just kind of makes claims. And this gives it a sense of controversy because the claims being made are not standard kinds of claims. They're counterintuitive, probably, to the average reader. So McCloskey opens with, and by the way, these are not quotes. Wherever there's quotation marks, they're quotes. This is just me summarising. So McCloskey opens with, economists don't follow their own professed modernist methodological rules. So these modernist methodological rules are coming from copying 19th century physics and mathematics, and by following the dictates of philosophers of science, traditional philosophers of science. Anyway, so they're not following these rules in fact, and that's a good thing that they're not following these rules. The mimicking of 19th century physics and mathematics by economists was just a bad move, probably because economics is dealing with flesh and blood human beings interacting in a vast social system, giant ecology, so to speak, and physics and mathematics might simply be inappropriate for studying that kind of object. And the modernist methodological nostrums that come from the philosophers of science are themselves philosophically weak. They're not robust in themselves. Furthermore, if they were adhered to, if economists did follow the methodological rules that they claim to, then this would seriously stunt the progress of economics. So this is why it's a good thing that they're not following the rules. The standards of argument used in economics, and presumably any other discipline, should be internally generated and validated. They shouldn't be taken from modernist philosopher kings. They shouldn't be imposed from the outside. Rather, the standards of argument should be developed internally according to what is appropriate to the subject matter and perhaps the kind of quote-unquote disciplinary culture of economics. Economists are not aware of this. Well, that's presupposed, otherwise there's no point to the article. So economists should be more self-conscious about the actual rhetoric that they use. And if they do this, they will better understand why it is that they agree with each other, for the most part, on a variety of topics, but also why they disagree with each other. And furthermore, if they're more self-conscious about their rhetoric, the actual rhetoric they use, they won't be so dismissive of their opponents on methodological grounds. So they won't be able to write off their opponents as saying, oh, you're not doing science according to standard X, because, if McCloskey's right, standard X is not really followed by anyone anyway. So it would be a disingenuous way of dismissing opponents, and that should be something that's avoided. Rather, the quality of arguments will improve once it's realised that everyone, in fact, is really persuaded by a variety of what she's calling rhetorical devices. That is, being persuaded by the aptness of a metaphor, by the relevance of historical precedents, by introspection, that is, reflection on your own thoughts, and projecting that onto others as an explanation of the behaviour of others. The appeal to authority, the use of aesthetic criteria by which you judge and the worth of an argument, and also moral concerns. These are also persuasive in argumentation in economics. So she's implicitly suggesting here that all of these kinds of rhetorical devices or modes of argumentation are in fact utilised in economics, and they are in fact persuasive in economics, but no one recognises them as either they don't consciously recognise them, or if they do consciously recognise them, they don't give them the legitimacy that they deserve. So we've got this kind of it's like a little list of rhetorical devices, but that doesn't really add up to a methodology per se, in the same sense as you find in traditional philosophy of science. So the only methodology of worth that is really, according to McCloskey, is simply the following imperatives: be honest, be clear, and be tolerant of others in attempting to persuade people of your view. That, in a nutshell, is all there is to methodology, a good methodology, in fact, that people sometimes do follow and that they should follow. So that's the introduction as I've reconstructed it. So now let's move on to the first section.